Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities of Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, again, we're doing more throwbacks. I love throwbacks, Tom. I love it. It's my favorite time of year because there's no new music coming out and we get the opportunity to listen to requests, to listen to albums that we think are really, really important to, musical history, that we get to have a chance to go back and review those and just familiarize ourselves, get a deeper understanding of these albums. Because even if we've listened to these albums before in the past, like the album we're reviewing today, even if we've listened to them before, if we haven't put our reviewer hats on, it's hard to, I feel like I can't truly understand an album anymore until I actually review it.
It's a totally different perspective.
It totally is.
And it's great.
So today's album, Portishead, Dummy. Now, Portishead may or may not have been one of the, big artists who started the trip-hop genre. They're from Bristol, England, and Tom, you, as our musical historian, know a little bit about Portishead.
Only a little bit. They're an interesting kind of on the down low kind of mysterious band, and I think that's what's really interesting. They've only come out with a few albums over their 15 to 20 year span. A lot of time between albums, but man, have they made an impact. And trip hop is an interesting genre because while it was kind of beginning to get its start in the 80s, it didn't really burst into the mainstream, if you could call it, more so in the UK than here, until the early to mid 90s, when you had key artists like Portishead and Tricky and Massive Attack coming out. Massive Attack maybe even a little more so because Blue Lines came a little earlier. Sure. Exactly. So that kind of set up the stage, but then you had artists like Portishead and Tricky coming and getting significant acclaim in the genre, which while they may not have started it, they definitely helped push it along and make it an important genre in music. And really why I think it's so important is because it does something with electronic music that just hadn't really been approached before. And it blends electronic music with a lot of organic sounds, organic instruments.
A lot of jazz, soul,
absolutely,
even funk influence there.
Using samples. But instead of doing it to focus on something dancey and up-tempo and kind of futuristic sounding, it's all about mood. And that's what I love about that. It's all about the mood and the way that they're able to approach it from an instrumental standpoint and then have the vocals come and enhance that. Because the instrumentals, the beats, oh my God, the beats on Dummy in particular are absolutely incredible. They are breathtakingly good. And then Beth Gibbons' vocals come on top and it's like you almost didn't even need any more, and then you've got Beth Gibbons' vocals.
Right. So, this came out in 1994. Trip hop as a genre, the trip being kind of the drug trip that you might be on as you listen to this. But
kind of, it stumbles along, kind of feels
like you're tripping. Yeah. But the whole point of what they were going is exactly what you said, focusing more on the beats. Hip-hop had obviously, created a whole genre, which it was still quite young in 1994 when this came out, even younger when Blue Lines came out. But the whole point of trip-hop as a genre was to take that and really focus on having that, electronic, experimental edge to it that's beat-focused. And Dummy is a seminal trip-hop record because of its attention to detail in beat construction. The electronic music through Kid A in 2000 would have never been made without Dummy. Never. And Kid A has gone on to inspire a ton of artists, but Dummy has to be one of the most, inspirational albums when it comes to electronic music, just simply because of just the beat construction of the things that they can do. The thing is that this isn't just simple electronic music. You get a ton of really interesting sounds throughout this, whether it's good, there, like almost every track on this album I think has guitar in it. Usually you have some sort of like keyboard or something that's constructing a melodic beat, and that beat is usually very thick and it's a slower pace. These songs aren't fast-paced songs. They're usually delivered at a very slow pace, and it allows the song to kind of just open up in front of you as different layers come in, and especially Beth Gibbons' vocals. Now, let's go in and talk about her vocals, because her vocals are particularly key to understanding and loving and falling in love with this album, which I'll just come out and say that I've loved this album for a long time. Reviewing it just strengthened that. Because what I noticed is that Beth Gibbons, her vocals are never front and center. It's not like, we reviewed earlier today in our reviewing session, we reviewed Hole. It's not like Courtney Love's vocals where she's all over the place, showing what she can do, dynamically with her voice and how she can and make it shrill and anything. Beth Gibbons never has to do any of that, because what she has is perfect control. First of all, she has a fantastic voice. Her range is out of this world. She's able to sing, very high. It has a soul almost feel to it. It's very jazzy, and at the same time, I mean, it just adds a lot of just mysteriousness to this album. She just the way she sings, it's never over delivered, but it's never under delivered too. It's just right. It's just the level of intensity that the song needs to give it this edge.
And that's what I think is really neat about this album. It lives in this kind of limbo and creates this balance that almost shouldn't be possible in music. And the way that it does that is well, first off, with the beats and the instrumental melodies going along with the beats. One key thing that you kind of mentioned that I want to kind of reiterate also is that even when you have melodies, the melodies are functioning rhythmically to enhance the beat, regardless of what instrument's playing it. And that even includes Beth Gibbons' vocals. I mean, there's a very rhythmic element to her vocals. But what it comes down to is that the beats and those instrumentals sound sinister. They sound absolutely brooding and sinister. And then her vocals sound like she's some heartbroken angel.
It's that delicateness on top of just something that's brooding.
Exactly.
And it's that dichotomy, so cool. that really just that contrast. It makes it so addictive.
And what it does is it gives it the ability to create tension without being intense. And there is a very important difference there, because you just get this just like evil, dark, but awesome energy from it, but it never explodes. It never does it in like a metal way, you know? It never gets up tempo. The dynamic never really goes above a 5 or a 6. But still you just feel this, like, it gives you just this shudder.
Yeah, I mean,
that is
like any
unreal.
album that's so moody and deliberate in how it's crafted in songs that it can make you feel a certain way. Like when I listen to this, it's almost like I'm in like one of those sport blazer coats, and I'm walking through at night, like down like in Manhattan. I'm walking through like a parking garage, going to kill somebody, like something crazy like that. Like this album it takes you to another place. Music has to be like music that can do that is special, and you instantly, from putting on the first track and then listening to my favorite track on this album, Sour Times track 2, you instantly are just taken into another world. That's dark. I mean, it's honestly it's dark, but somewhat very enjoyable. Now, when I listen to track 5, Wandering Star, I am always blown away by just the severity of that beat.
Yeah.
Thinking about how many bands have been influenced just by that single beat, that just crushing, just is just a low, just boom, boom, just like that. And then, I mean, it's just the way it delivers, and it just creates that tension you were talking about. Really, there's a lot of very good songs on this album. What I think is really impressive is the fact that there's songs here that just simply are darker and more intense. Wandering Star is one of those. I think Sour Times, Mysterians, Strangers is actually pretty big, but there's actually a couple of other songs like Numb and even Pedestal or Roads that are a little bit more just kind of low key. And they act to balance out kind of the more intense songs. So that makes this a much more fluid listen.
Yeah, It Could Be Sweet is another one of those.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It makes the album a little less heavy on the listener. And so those darker moments feel even better.
Right.
They feel just emphasized by that.
Because had this been just, nothing but those dark, moody tracks, the album aspect of this, like, it still might have accomplished a lot in sound, in original content. But really, I mean, to make the album a great listening experience, it takes that craft in songwriting and in album sculpting. And they clearly had that. That's something that I think is the mark of a great album. And Dummy is, I mean, that's latent throughout Dummy. I mean, and I also think that, like track 9, Biscuit, has an incredible beat, just in the construction of it. I mean, I
love it. I geek out over that song. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and I think Glory Box is an incredibly strong closer. I mean, from start to finish, I think you could listen to this, and I honestly, like, I have trouble picking tracks. I love this album. When I put this on, I'm swept away. I never want to turn it off. And it's a mixture. Everything that they do on this album, from an instrumental performance, from a production performance, from even a vocal performance, I'm just blown away. This is a perfect 100 in my book.
I actually am going to go a little higher than I originally said to you.
Little wanker!
I'm going 93. And the reason I'm a little lower than Jake on this one, I have a little bit more trouble really coming back to this album. I always love it when I'm listening to it, but it doesn't stick with me quite as much, and it's still starting to grow on me. I mean, I've listened to this album really dozens of times over the years, and especially while we were preparing to review it, probably about 7 times. And I have a little bit of trouble digging my teeth into it just because it's so even. And it's really not a fault of the album, because in the way it's constructed and what it's accomplishing, that actually works in its favor. But as a listener, and just because of my taste, you know me, I love songs that just explode. And I love albums that have those climaxes. And this simply doesn't. That's probably why I'll always favor albums like Max and Quay in this genre, because I feel like that really reaches those energetic peaks, and I like that. But still, I think as I continue to listen to this album, I'll probably love it more. And it's really just about listener preference. But still, guys, if you haven't listened to Dummy, you gotta go listen to this.
You'll be a dummy if you don't listen to Dummy. What is your favorite trip-hop album? I'm really interested. Tom and I would love to hear your guys' perspective on this genre. What album is just, in your mind, the album you always go to? For me, it is Dummy. For Tom, it's Max and Quay. Tricky's Max and Quay.
Yeah.
What is yours? Tell us at www.velocitiesofmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesofmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums you'd love to see us review on this channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.